Daisy here. I'm just your normal 19-year-old college girl living away from home for the first time. And can't deny that it could get lonely sometimes, and I felt homesick a lot. But it's okay though, as I have Lucas, my loving boyfriend. Okay, yeah, his family is well off, so he always treats me to nice places and buys me nice gifts. A few months ago, he told me to move in with him in his family's mansion, and I've agreed. But don't get me wrong, I'm not a gold digger at all. I just had no other choice. It all started one night when thieves broke into my apartment while I was asleep. It was terrifying. I knew they were ransacking my living room and stealing my TV and laptop, but I'd rather stay put to protect myself. After that, I didn't want to be home alone at all anymore. Lucas, too, was worried for me, so one evening he told me, "Daisy, I think you should come live with me, at least until you find a roommate." Wow. I wasn't expecting that, but I guess it made sense. I felt a bit awkward about it, though, as I've only been to his house, or should I say his parents' mansion, a few times. And although there was plenty of space, and his parents adored me, but I didn't want to feel like I was intruding. Sensing my apprehension, he continued, "I've explained the situation to my parents, and they're cool with it." I smiled at him and replied, "Well, okay then, but it will just be temporary." Before I moved in with Lucas and his family, I felt very anxious. I wasn't sure if I'd be able to adapt to their lifestyle, and I didn't want to upset his parents. I worried a lot, but not once did I think my trouble would be with the maid. Yep, you heard me right. On my first day at the mansion, a cheerful woman immediately ran towards me and greeted me. Mrs. Harris introduced her to me. "This is our maid, Sarah. She's been with us for years, so if you have any problem, just ask her. We're all family here. Make yourself comfortable." Then Sarah quickly grabbed my suitcase and smiled at me. "Miss, let me help you with that. I'll show you to the room." It was so strange having someone else do stuff for me like this. I could just smile back and follow her upstairs. That made me feel so welcomed here, and how nice this maid was. Maybe we could be friends. But suddenly, a thump cuts off my thoughts. It was Sarah. She'd thrown my suitcase to the floor, then said, "What on earth do you have in there? Carry it yourself. Your room is down the hallway to the left." And she walked off. What was that? Did I do something wrong? I quickly picked up my stuff in confusion. I didn't want to make an enemy of anyone here, especially not on my first day. So after I unpacked my stuff, I went down to the kitchen to help her prepare dinner. She was still so grumpy at me and told me to just get lost as I'd only be in her way. I remained persistent as I really wanted to resolve whatever her misunderstandings about me were. Eventually, she gave in and said, "Fine, you want to help? Go dice up all of those onions." "Yes, sure, but all of these?" I asked her while staring at a basket full of onions. "Are you going to help me or not?" she said sharply. I replied, Okay, don't worry, I'll do it." I tried starting up a convo with her, but she just rolled her eyes at me. Meanwhile, the onions were giving me hell. My eyes were burning and tears were streaming out. Ouch! When I finally finished, she stared at my swollen eyes and said, "If you're that upset about living here, you could just leave." "It's the onions," I told her. She smirked as she took them off me, then walked straight to the trash and threw them away, saying, "You took too long. I didn't need it anymore." What? My face dropped, but I was far too exhausted to argue with her anyway. That's when Lucas and his parents came down for dinner. Sarah quickly set up the tables, then called me over with a bright smile as she pulled out a chair for me. "Miss Campbell, please take a seat. Dinner is ready." Was she for real? I couldn't keep up with her constant change in personality. After dinner, I approached Sarah while she was doing the dishes. "Look, I'm sorry, but did I do something to upset you?" "Yes, you sure did. You waltz around like you own the place, but you're nothing more than a parasite. And I won't let you worm your way into my home." Before I had time to process her words, she grabbed an expensive-looking marble plate and smirked at me as she dropped it onto the ground. Then, with a piece of broken plate, she quickly slit her hand and yelled out loud, "Miss, I'm so sorry for vexing you, but you shouldn't have broken this. It's Mr. Harris's favorite plate." Hearing the crashing sound, everyone quickly gathered in the kitchen and stared at me for answers. I immediately explained, "No, it's not like that." But Mrs. Harris said, "It's okay. Let's help Sarah first." Then she led her off to get the first aid kit. I grabbed Lucas's arm. "Babe, I really didn't do that." He reassured me with a smile. "Daisy, don't worry about it." "You don't understand. Sarah did it on purpose and blamed me." He laughed as if he'd just heard something ridiculous, then said, "No way! I bet it was just some sort of misunderstanding. Sarah is really nice. Don't worry, you two will get close in no time. Now let me clean up this mess. You go and relax." I felt frustrated and fed up, but I reluctantly went back to my room. This girl was definitely onto me. But for what reason? Over the following weeks, her vendetta against me continued. She washed my white clothes with colored ones, then intentionally threw away my stuff and made out she mistook it for trash while cleaning my room. She put extra hot chili flakes in my food, then rushed over with a glass of water when I started to choke, and so on. Worse still, Lucas and his parents wouldn't hear a bad word said against her. They were completely oblivious to how crazy she was. I didn't understand why she hated me so much. Was she jealous of me or something? All right then. If she wanted to play with me, then game on. So I decided to spy on her to catch her red-handed and show everyone her true self. My chance to expose her finally arrived. I was passing her room and I saw her holding a watch. I recognized it. It was Mr. Harris's. She looked shifty as she placed it into her drawer and hid it underneath some of her clothes. Aha! Got her. I quickly ran to the garden to find Mrs. Harris and managed to persuade her to come with me to Sarah's room. Sarah stood by looking all innocent as Mrs. Harris checked her drawer, but the watch wasn't there, and instead we found it still intact on the vanity in the master bedroom. Huh? At that moment, Sarah suddenly bawled out, "Ma'am, I would never steal from you. You know that. I've gone out of my way to please Miss Campbell here, but she's intent on making my life a misery." Oh my God. Those crocodile tears. Did she have no shame? I tried explaining myself to Mrs. Harris, but she held up her hand and told me she didn't want to hear it. I wanted to make amends, so the next morning, I prepared Mrs. Harris's favorite smoothie and breakfast for her. I set it up nicely on the dining table, then went upstairs to get her, smirking at Sarah as she passed by. Mrs. Harris seemed happy with the gesture, but just an hour later, she said she didn't feel well. She was clutching her stomach as she glared at me and blamed me for poisoning her food. What? How frustrating! And Lucas wasn't even home for me to talk to. So I went to the kitchen to check the expiration date of everything I'd used. But I swear it was all fresh. I even went through the trash to check the used milk carton. That's when I saw some sesame seeds in there. That's odd, as I knew Mrs. Harris was allergic to them, so we never had them in the house. It had to be Sarah. She must have poisoned the breakfast with them when I was out of the room. Later that day, Mrs. Harris was feeling better, so I went to see her and told her that I was leaving, on one condition. Then I persuaded her to come into my room and hide in my closet. By this point, I think she was willing to do anything just to get me out of her house. Then I called Sarah over to help me pack up my stuff. She stepped into my room with a cocky smile and knocked over the box of my stuff, then said, "I was always going to win." I replied, "Fine, you win. But before I leave, I want to ask you something. You put sesame seeds in the breakfast I made for Mrs. Harris, didn't you?" Sarah looked around to check no one else was about before she grinned at me and said, "Yes, it was me, all me. While you were sucking up to Mrs. Harris, I ground some up and mixed them into the disgusting smoothie you made. Oh, I also pretended to steal the watch because I knew you were spying on me. Geez, you made it so easy." "But why?" I asked. "But why?" She imitated my voice. "Because this is my family. I've lived here for years. You can't just show up all pretty and carefree and expect to have everything and push me out of my own home. I never wanted to push you out. All I wanted was to be your friend." As if. This is my gold mine, not yours. Sooner or later, all of this will be mine, and God knows I deserve it. I've put up with this annoying family and a poor salary for years. Mr. Harris always dreamed of having a daughter, but no. He's stuck with that dumb son of his. It's only a matter of time until he realizes I can be the daughter he longed for. Or, now that you won't be around, it'll be easy for me to trap Lucas by having his baby. Either way, the winner is always me. Suddenly, the wardrobe doors burst open and out emerged Mrs. Harris looking furious. She pulled Sarah's hair and dragged her out of the room. Wow, who knew the mild-mannered Mrs. Harris could be so kick-ass? I guess everyone has a hidden side. Anyway, this proved my innocence, and Sarah was kicked out right on the spot. Then Mrs. Harris apologized to me and insisted that I should keep staying with them. I thanked her for the offer, but politely declined. As I felt ready to leave and move in with my friend, I was just relieved that she'd learned the truth and that Sarah had gone once and for all. So, Lucas and I are still together and are very happy. Yes, it was annoying he didn't believe me at first, but he's such a sweet and trusting guy that he'd never expect someone could be capable of such horrible things. But hey, that's just one of the many reasons why I love him. As for his parents, well, I still visit them sometimes. I even cook for them now and then, but thankfully, there have been no more sesame seed incidents, and there's no more crazy Maid to contend with. Phew!
Hi again, it's Amelia here. In the first part of my story, I had a horrible encounter with a rude guy in the restaurant I worked in. I hoped I'd never have to meet that kind of awful person ever again. But life doesn't work like that, does it? And ironically, I bumped into him around a month after that, and he saved my life. Then I ended up paying him back by letting him move in with me as he was homeless. And after a few days, I just had enough of his excuses of not being able to find a job. So I told him he could come work in the restaurant with me. I introduced him to my manager, and because he's quite a bright-looking guy, he immediately got the job. However, it wasn't all plain sailing. I mean, what's with his laziness and clumsiness? He was a walking disaster. He broke so many dishes within his first few shifts only, he'd be lucky if he even got any salary. And that's not all. He shouted at a kid who dropped an ice cream on the floor he'd just cleaned. Obviously, the kid burst out crying, which made Jude even angrier. You can just imagine how much our manager had to apologize to both the kid and his mom. And after that, she was furious with Jude and threatened to fire him, all in his first week. Meanwhile, things at home weren't much better. He didn't lift a finger. The place was such a mess, and one time I asked him to do some laundry while I went out to pick up some groceries. Well, I came home to find the laundry room covered in bubbles. And there he was, standing in the middle of that mess, confusingly pushing all the buttons possible to make it stop. He had basically poured the whole bottle of detergent in there. I couldn't believe it. He was useless, and he kept breaking things. I actually had to keep a list of it all, so that when he got his salary, he could pay me back. He was a nightmare. And yet, even though he was lazy and messy, that didn't stop him spending hours on his hair. I kid you not, I've watched him fix his hair for about 90 minutes once, and I swear, it still looked the same. Not to mention, one time I accidentally walked in on him singing in the bathroom while stroking his hair. All he was wearing was a little towel, and we both got such a fright we screamed, and I ran out of there in embarrassment. I came close to kicking him out so many times. He drove me crazy. Honestly, one night I was working late, so I asked if he could prepare dinner. Just a simple pasta. I mean, how hard could that be, right? Well, it was mission impossible for Jude. He burnt the pasta. Burnt it! How does one burn pasta? There were bowls and pans everywhere. When I started shouting at him, he just laughed and shoved me a dish of burnt noodles and said, "Oh, come on, Amelia. I'm a chef. It's art. Now please, enjoy my signature dish, the smoky charcoal pasta." I could have killed this guy, but lucky for him, his humor has saved him this time. So instead, I decided to teach him how to cook. And fortunately, he was actually a pretty decent chef, and he enjoyed it. One night I came home, and he'd made a Thai green curry. It unexpectedly looked quite nice. Still, I was nervous to try it. But OMG, it was delicious. He proudly told me how the chef at the restaurant had given him the recipe along with some cooking tips. That's great! And even though the kitchen was a total mess, it was a start, so I decided he could cook from then on, and then I'd do the washing up. Pretty soon, his 1 month was up. I told him it was time to move out, but he begged me to let him stay longer, as he'd barely got any salary from the restaurant due to owing so much from all the broken dishes. I wanted to say no, but if I was honest with myself, it had been quite lonely living by myself, and even though he was a total klutz, I kinda enjoyed having some company. Plus, he was a top chef. I pretended to be thinking about it for a sec, and then said, "Okay, fine, but you've got 1 more month. Then you're out. He was super happy, thanking me nonstop while running to the kitchen, saying he'd cook me a special dinner in return. Just like that, we learned to get along better with each other as we lived and worked together. And, well, time flew. And soon, another month had gone by, and yet neither of us even brought it up. So he kept on staying. Then one day, while Jude and I were working, a group of stuck-up girls came in. One of them suddenly said, "Guys, look! Isn't that our Prince Jude? Why is he working here like a loser?" Then they all burst out laughing. This made me angry, and I was about to go over and say something when I realized that the girl who'd spoken was Jude's ex. I knew Jude had heard, and I thought he'd get annoyed, but he just ignored her and kept working. But the girls kept on laughing, and it was seriously annoying. I went over to take their order, but Jude's ex refused to be served by me. She kept asking for Jude to take their order, and when I said he was busy, she demanded to see our manager. Eventually, he went to serve them, but his ex kept on harassing him. She even dropped water all over the floor so that he'd have to come and clean it up. I offered to do it for him, but he wouldn't let me. And then it got worse. As they were leaving, that girl dropped a $10 tip on the floor. I was furious. What a spoiled brat. I thought Jude would leave it, but he calmly sat down to pick it up while the group of girls all burst out laughing as they walked out of the restaurant. I ran over to comfort Jude, but he just smiled and said, "Hey, I have $10. What do you want for dinner? My treat." Then he went back to work, but every time I looked over at him, I could see he was hurt. I really wanted to yell at his ex. How rude can a person get? Later that night at dinner, we spoke about everything that had happened that day. I told him he shouldn't feel sad about his ex, because she was rude and never deserved him in the first place. But then he just laughed it off and said that it wasn't that gold digger that he was bothered by, but actually because it reminded him of his old attitude and the ways he used to treat people, including me on that first day we'd met. Then he sighed and said, "I bet if I'd been a better person, a decent son, then my parents wouldn't have kicked me out that heartlessly, even when I wasn't their actual son." Suddenly I felt so sorry for him, but I didn't know what to say to make it better. But to be fair, looking back at the person he was back then when we first met versus now, he was like a totally different guy. He had been doing a great job at work, and all our colleagues loved him. One day, a kid dropped her ice cream, and I stared in shock, waiting for Jude to freak out. But instead, he went over and asked if she was okay, and if she'd like another ice cream. I couldn't believe it. He was so sweet to her. I couldn't stop myself from smiling at him. He'd seriously changed. And even though it pains me to admit, he's a very good-looking guy. So naturally, he got a lot of attention. In fact, a lot of girls came to the restaurant just to be served by him. They even openly flirted with him, and he surely loved it. I just rolled my eyes, wishing I didn't have to see that. There was one girl in particular who came to the restaurant almost every day. She was super pretty, and obviously was trying to get his attention. I noticed one shift that Jude was kind of flirting back. How irritating! I guess he hadn't changed that much then. Then one day, I saw her hand him a piece of paper. When he came back to the counter, he was grinning and said to me, "Looks like I've got a date tonight." I was so annoyed and said, "It's not okay to flirt with the customers. I'll tell our manager." Then I stormed off. Later that afternoon, he clocked out first without telling me, and when I got home from work, I saw him being all dressed up for his date, which made me feel so grumpy for no reason. He was whistling and sounded so happy. Then as he walked out the door, he said, "Don't wait up for me. It might be a late one." Ugh, he was driving me nuts. I told him he had to be home by 10 p.m. or I'd lock him out. He laughed and said, "Are you joking? You're giving me a curfew? Geez, Amelia, if I didn't know better, I'd think you were jealous or something." Ew, I wasn't jealous, and I told him that. Who did he think he was? As if I'd ever be jealous of that girl. No chance. And yet, I couldn't sleep that night. I kept tossing and turning, and thinking about Jude and that pretty girl. Eventually, I got up and decided to go for a walk. Maybe I just needed some fresh air. But as I walked into the park, there he was. But the girl was nowhere to be seen. Instead, he was sitting on a bench surrounded by stray cats. I walked towards him, and he was as surprised to see me as I was to see him. I asked him why he wasn't out on his hot date, and he said, "Oh, the date went well, but I decided to come sleep in the park because I missed your curfew." That made me feel so guilty. I was about to justify myself. Then he winked and said, "Just kidding. Actually, the date was boring. I did come to the bar and hung out with her for a bit, but I strangely felt out of place, so I made up an excuse to leave. I didn't want to come home too early, though, in case you'd laugh in my face, so here I am." I don't know. I think I'm kinda over dating and stuff. Wait, am I hearing it wrong? Our playboy chooses to go play with stray cats instead of hanging out with hot girls in fancy bars? Are you really, Jude? I playfully rubbed his head while teasing him. Can't deny, but I actually felt so relieved hearing him say that the date didn't go well, and that nothing happened between him and that girl. In fact, I was strangely happy. But what does that mean? Do you wonder if Jude ever actually moved out? Stay tuned for the final part of my story. You wouldn't want to miss it. Hi, it's Amelia again. In the second part of my story, Jude started working in the restaurant, and at first, it was a total disaster. He made a mess everywhere he set foot in. He was driving me totally crazy. But then things started to change. Turns out, he was a pretty talented chef that could help me with housework, and at work, he was becoming quite popular. One day, he got a date with a pretty girl, which annoyed me so much. But then I found him in the park playing with stray cats instead of going on that date. Honestly, that made me feel so happy. Has he really changed? To find out, let's see what happened next. At the restaurant, there was a new waiter called Oliver, who was a year younger than me. Our manager asked me to look after him and show him the ropes. To be honest, I was really impressed with Oliver, as he was such a sweet guy and a fast learner too. Pretty soon, we became closer, and he was like my little brother. Jude, however, did not like him one bit. He was always shouting at Oliver, and even complained that he was careless and clumsy. Talk about the pot calling the kettle black. We all knew that Jude was the clumsiest guy in the world. Anyway, Jude's birthday was coming up, and I wanted to buy him a new shirt, seeing as he mainly was wearing old clothes from the donation center. I wanted it to be a surprise, so I asked Oliver to come shopping with me, as Jude and Oliver were pretty much the same size. After buying a beautiful sweatshirt for Jude, Oliver took me home, and as we approached my house, I spotted Jude pacing up and down outside. Was he waiting for someone? When he saw that it was Oliver who gave me a ride, he looked angry and stormed into the house. I quickly said bye to Oliver and ran in, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The table was set with a whole bunch of delicious-looking dishes, and there were even candles and flowers. I was so confused. Had he invited a girl over for a date? How dare he? I asked him what it was for, and he said, "What day is it today? Did you forget it?" Oh, so all of this was for his birthday party? I just laughed and handed him the gift bag. He immediately looked so happy. What a child. But then he suddenly gave me a doubtful look and asked, "But what did you do in the afternoon? And with that Oliver guy?" I told him I'd asked Oliver to help me go shopping for his birthday, and then I jokingly said, "But why are you suddenly so curious? Why, you looked so annoyed upon seeing him. Are you jealous or something?" I wasn't expecting what happened next. He suddenly blushed and muttered out, "Actually, yes, I like you, Amelia. In fact, I think I'm in love with you." Whoa! What? I totally froze and didn't know what to say, but just kept looking at him and gasped. He could see I was speechless, so he waved his hands in front of me and said, "Hello?"
Earth to Amelia.
Then he continued.
Well, Amelia, do you, have feelings for me too? Actually, never mind. It's not important. I mean, if you don't, then just forget it, and we can go back to being friends.
Oh God, I had never seen him so shy before. His face went red as a tomato, and he kept scratching his head shyly. I couldn't help laughing, as, honestly, he looked so cute. So I grabbed his hands, and I couldn't stop the words from pouring out of my mouth. Jude, honestly, I like you too. My heart was racing as I said that, and I didn't know what else to say. But suddenly he was hugging me tightly, and then the next moment we were kissing. I was over the moon. I hadn't realized how much I'd wanted that to happen. It felt amazing. From that moment on, we were inseparable. We lived together, worked together, and in our spare time we went camping, hung out in the park, and cycled to watch the sunset. He cared about me so much, and I don't think I'd ever been that happy in my life before. I didn't think life could be that great. Then, one day, while we were cleaning the house, he suddenly called me.
Amelia, look! How cute these pictures are! You drew them, right? Wow, you're gifted.
I realized he was looking at my box of comic books I'd drawn, which I'd hid under the bed. I felt kinda embarrassed, and told him that I hadn't done any drawings in a while. Then he asked me why I stopped, and I told him about how it had always been my dream to go to art college, but since my mum passed away, I'd had to forget it for a while and focus on just surviving. Jude suddenly grabbed my hands and said,
Honey, let's make this dream happen. I'll help you, okay?
I was so touched and gave him the biggest hug as a response. Jude was my everything. And best of all, he always supported me. And now, he encouraged me to follow my dream too. Time went on, and everything was going amazingly. Until one day, when everything changed. Jude and I were out walking when a luxury black car stopped next to us. A random guy appeared and told us to get in the car. I freaked out and grabbed Jude's arm. What was happening? Were we being kidnapped? There was no way we were getting in the car. But suddenly the guy said,
Jude, this is an order from your parents.
Jude looked shocked and said,
What do they want? They already kicked me out, so why should I come back? They want to show me how happy they are without me or something?
But still, Jude climbed in the car, and I had no choice but to follow him. On the way, there were so many questions running through my head, but I just kept quiet. A short while later, we stopped in front of a mansion. This must have been Jude's house. Whoa, I knew he came from a rich family, but not to this extent. Jude held my hand and led me inside, where a couple, probably his parents, was sitting and waiting for us. Jude immediately shouted at them, saying,
What do you want? I moved out just like you wanted, so why can't you leave me alone?
I had never seen Jude so angry before. It actually scared me. His parents looked calm, though, and they just sat there smiling, and then his mom asked him to calm down and take a seat. The next moment, a maid appeared and brought us some water, but she accidentally spilled some, and she looked mortified. She kept apologizing and wiping it up, but Jude took the tissue and started cleaning it for her. Then he politely said to her that he would come help her make the pot of tea. Jude's parents looked shocked, but somewhat content, and asked Jude to stay as they had something important to tell him. They couldn't stop grinning. It was so weird. Then they told us their news, which shocked me to my core. Jude actually was their biological son. They'd lied to him because he'd had such a bad attitude, and they just wanted to teach him a lesson and force him to grow up a bit. They were sick of doing everything for him, and thought maybe moving out for a while would inspire him to become independent and realize the true value of family and money. What? I couldn't believe what I had heard. They kicked him out to help him grow up? That almost sounded like nonsense, but I guess it had worked, right? He had changed. But how could they come up with such a crazy plan? Of course, Jude wasn't okay with this. In fact, he was furious.
What did you say?
He screamed.
Am I a joke to you or something?
His mom tried to calm him down and said, Jude, honey, it was the only way. You were out of control, partying every night and spending all our money. We didn't know what else to do. We've been so worried about you. But son, we're so proud of you. Then his dad continued.
We've always been keeping an eye on you, son. We saw you working in that restaurant, and we are just so happy you've turned a corner and found this independence.
Then she turned to me and said, Amelia, right? Thank you so much, dear. You've looked after our son better than we ever could, and you've helped him so much. I just blushed and said, No, it's Jude who takes care of me, actually. He's been amazing. Jude was squeezing my hand tightly, and I could see how shocked he was. Over the past 6 months, he'd been on a complete roller coaster. From being abandoned by his parents to discovering that they'd lied to him just to teach him a lesson. I couldn't believe they'd done it. But to be honest, I was grateful. Otherwise, I wouldn't have met him, and he might still be out there dating gold diggers and partying his life away. So I turned to him and said, Babe, I know it hurts right now, but your parents did what they thought was best for you. Plus, thanks to that, you were able to realize who your true friends were, right? The ones who don't take advantage of you because of your money. It took a few moments, but then he gave me a gentle smile, and it was like he finally understood everything. He looked at his parents and said,
You guys are crazy, but if you hadn't done something so ridiculous, I'd never have met Amelia. She's made me the man I am today. Without her, and without both of you, I'd never have changed. Gosh, I miss you both. Mom, Dad, thank you.
At that, they all burst into tears and started hugging, and I just stood there, the tears pouring down my cheeks too. Watching them reunite like that was so touching, and it really made me miss my own mom. After that, we left, and as we were walking home in silence, Jude suddenly stopped and turned to me.
Amelia, thank you. Thank you for never giving up on me and for taking care of me. And now, it's my turn. I want you to go to art college and make your dreams a reality. Don't worry about money or anything. Just go make your mom and me proud.
I was speechless. I started crying again and gave him the biggest hug of my life. And guess what? We've moved into a new place downtown, and I'm about to start art college next week. Jude is working in his dad's company, and I have a feeling we're going to get engaged soon. Don't tell Jude, but I found the ring box he hid in his wardrobe, though. But I'll surely say yes, and then we can get married after I graduate. It has been a crazy journey, but I wouldn't want it to be any other way. I'm so excited for what's to come. Wish me luck.
Hi, my name is Happiness. You're impressed with my name, right? My dad gave me that name. And yeah, as you can guess, he put a lot of hopes and dreams in me. I'm now 18 years old, and tomorrow I will fly to Massachusetts to start my college. My parents are preparing a farewell party for me downstairs. I have never left my hometown and been away from my family, so this is such an occasion. As I'm packing my belongings for college, a flood of memories come to mind. You see, when I was a kid, my family was dirt poor. We lived in an old, dilapidated house on the outskirts of Selma in Alabama. I remember we would buy a chicken at the beginning of the month, and my parents would make it last the whole month. I didn't realize we were poor, though. In fact, at that point, I was just a happy, carefree little girl, but that wouldn't last. My mom worked as a cleaner for a rich family, but they treated her terribly, and she barely earned enough money to even take the bus there. My dad was a lorry driver, and so he was away a lot, delivering goods to other states. Every weekend when he came home, I'd stand out on the porch as soon as I saw his big truck driving up the dusty road. I'd run out there and jump up and down. The best part was that he always brought me a little present, like a piece of candy that he'd save for me, or a small toy. They weren't valuable gifts, but they meant the world to me. One time he came home, and I ran up to him and said, "Daddy, yesterday Jeannie's dad brought her a chocolate egg back from his trip. It even had a toy inside. I want one too." My dad looked confused. Then he said he'd heard of them, and they were called Kinder Eggs. And then, with loving eyes and a smile, he promised he'd find me one, no matter how hard it would be, even if it was the last thing he did. The next weekend, I raced out to the street and could barely contain my excitement as I waited for him to come home. I waited and waited, but still he didn't arrive. I started to get worried, so I asked my mom where he was. She said, "Oh, sweetie, he's on his way. Why don't you go to sleep, and as soon as you wake up, he'll be here." There was no way I could sleep. All I could think about was getting a chocolate egg with a toy inside. I'd almost dozed off when I heard his voice. I ran downstairs and jumped into his arms, hugging him. "I missed you, Daddy," I told him, and he laughed and said, "I missed you too, sweetie pie." Then I said, "Where is it? Did you get me a chocolate egg?" I eagerly asked. Then his face dropped. He said, "Sorry, baby. I was working late, so I didn't have time to buy one. But I promise I'll bring you two next time to make up for it. Okay?" But this wasn't okay. I was so disappointed. I pushed him away from me and burst into tears, saying, You promised me! I'd never cried like that before over something so small, but at the time it felt like such a big deal, and my dad looked confused to see me so upset. At that moment, my mom came through and saw me. She immediately understood everything, then started to comfort my dad. "Come on, honey, take a rest. You've worked yourself too hard recently. Come eat. You're so skinny these days." This just made me more annoyed. I was the one who needed comforting, not my dad. So I shouted at my mom, "Mommy, Daddy didn't keep his promise." But my mom just ignored me, and so I stormed back up the stairs, crying all the way. After I'd calmed down, my mom came to my room and said, "Happiness, your dad works so hard, and you should just be happy that he's home safely. I know he didn't bring you what you wanted, but he will next time, okay? In the meantime, I'll make your favorite cupcakes every day." "Every day? Wow, okay," I said to her. And she really did. She made me cupcakes every day, and I was so happy. After a few days, I said to her, "Mommy, I like you more than Daddy. I don't even love him anymore because he broke his promise." My mom just looked at me and said, "Oh, Happiness, you don't know what you're saying. One day when you grow up, you'll understand that everything your dad does is for you. He loves you so much." The next weekend rolled around, and as usual, I ran outside to wait for my dad. Just like the week before, the sun set and still he was nowhere to be seen. I was about to start crying when I noticed a man running towards our front door. My mom appeared and he said something, and suddenly my mom started panicking. She called out to me and said we had to go to Grandpa's place immediately. I had no idea what was happening, but for the next month, my grandpa took care of me because my parents didn't come home. I missed them so much, and whenever I asked when they were coming to get me, my grandpa just said, "Happiness, they're busy working. Don't you worry. Just stay here and enjoy your time with me." Eventually, I got used to it. Then one morning, Grandpa woke me up early and said it was time to go home. I was so excited that I kept on singing happily. As we pulled up outside our house, my heart started beating faster. I was home! Then a shadow appeared in the doorway, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was my mom and dad. But my dad was in a wheelchair. My mom looked so thin and tired, and my dad had no legs. What had happened? I looked to Grandpa to reassure me, but he looked as nervous as I did. Then in my little voice I said, "Daddy, where are your legs?" He smiled at me, and with his usual loving eyes said, "They got hurt. But hey, what do you think of my wheelchair?" He let me sit on his lap, and Mom pushed us around, and it was so cool. I was way too young to understand what was really going on. All I remember was how many people kept visiting to check on Dad, and that I finally got to try a chocolate egg. That same day, a doctor came to visit, and after he checked on my dad, he came over and patted my head. Then he pulled a chocolate egg out of his bag, and then another one, and another one. 3 chocolate eggs! I couldn't believe it. I was shaking with excitement. The doctor said the gift was from my dad, and that I should thank him. I ran to my dad and said, "Thank you, Daddy." He looked like he was going to cry, and I asked if he was okay, and he just smiled and said, "I'm happy because you're happy. That's all that matters to me." For the first time in my life, I got to try a chocolate egg, and it was the most delicious thing I'd ever tasted. And the best part was that inside there was a toy. After I opened and ate all 3, I just wanted more. I kept asking my dad when I could get more, and he just laughed. And then I thought, maybe if I studied really hard and was a good girl, I'd get some more. So that's what I did. I focused on my study, and one day I won a medal at school for winning a math contest. I was so excited to show my parents and assumed they'd give me a chocolate egg as a reward, but that's not what happened. They congratulated me, but said it wasn't possible for them to get me another chocolate egg. I don't know why, but this made me so angry. I cried, and I even threw my bag at them, and this made my mom super mad. She scolded me so much that I was scared and ran out the house and went to my grandpa's house. I cried and told him everything, and my grandpa said, "Happiness, the reason your mom got so mad is because she is under too much pressure and has to work so hard to look after you. Now, your dad can't work, so she's in charge, and it's a lot for her to deal with." Then he told me what happened to my dad, and it changed my life forever. That day when my dad was out doing his deliveries, he got an opportunity to do some overtime, which he jumped at the chance to do so he could buy me my chocolate eggs. On his way home, he stopped to buy them for me, and then because he was so tired, as he was leaving the store, he got hit by a drunk driver. He was hit so hard he lost both his legs. I couldn't believe it. How could I have been so selfish? If it weren't for me demanding a chocolate egg, my dad would still have his legs. I felt so terrible. And so the next day, when I won some candy for the other math contests, I came home and went to my parents. "Mommy, Daddy, I'm so sorry. I want you to have these. You always do your best to give me the sweetest life, and so I wanted to make yours sweeter too." That probably sounds a bit deep for a 6-year-old to say, right? Well, my grandpa taught me that one. My parents were so moved that they almost cried when they hugged me. And even though I didn't understand it at the time, I do now. And it's so true. It's taken me a while, but now that I'm about to move out, I finally understand the life my parents have given me and how sweet it has been. Through this channel, I'd like to send some words to my parents. Mom, Dad, if you're watching this, I want you to know how much I appreciate everything you've done for me. Now it's my turn to work hard and make you proud. No matter how hard life gets, I'll persevere, just like you both have, because I'm your happiness.
Hey guys, I'm Vanessa, and I want to tell you about my first love. So, do you all remember your first love? Yes, right? I mean, come on. How could you ever forget that first time butterflies in the tummy feeling, hand holding, and that kiss? In the heat of first love, it's easy to believe this will last forever and be a true fairy tale. Only so many first loves lead to a messy breakups that turn into a nightmare. My first love was with a boy named Julian, but you'll have to stick around to find out if our love story was a fairy tale dream or a fairy tale doom. Julian and I started off as friends, best friends. He lived across the street from me, and our families were close. We hung out all the time, so much so that our parents teased that we'd get married one day. At the time, I thought, no way, but we were just kids back then. Then, when I was about 10, I started to look at him differently. He was so cute and sweet, and I thought about him all the time. He liked me too, right? I mean, he bought me my favorite candy, let me play video games with him, and stuck up for me when these boys from school teased me. And then when I was 15, Julian and I were at our favorite spot. It was a really big old tree in the middle of the park. We went there loads and would lean against the tree trunk, do our homework, listen to music with one headphone, read books, basically anything relaxing. That's when he told me the shocking news. His dad had a new job in Germany, and they were moving there. What? How could this be? I was so surprised. I started crying. I expected him to comfort me, but instead he took out a pocket knife and started to carve on the tree. When he finished, he said,
Ta-da! How does it look?
He'd carve J Heart V in it. Oh gosh, he loved me too. I felt myself turn bright red and didn't want him to see me like that. So looking downward, I went to punch his arm but punched his face by mistake. Oops. Julian held his face and yelled, "Vanessa, what was that for?" "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Julian, I feel the same," I told him. We both started laughing, then we pinky promised each other that we would keep in touch. He took my hand and told me, "Ness, I'll come back for you, I promise." Then he leaned in and kissed me. And wow, it was truly magical. And then he left. The first few weeks without him were the hardest. I didn't really have any other friends, and I was so bored and lonely. I lived for my video calls with Julian. They were the only thing keeping me going. Telling him stuff that happened at school, such as how my math teacher wore the same hideous floral dress all week, made me feel like he was still there. Things went on like that for a while. It slowly became a habit for us to have a video chat at least twice a week. But then a couple of days after my 16th birthday, things changed. It was a normal Sunday morning and I woke up and went to wash my face. Ah! There were red spots all over my cheeks. I screamed so loudly that I woke everybody up. Even my neighbors had to run over and ask what the scream was about. My parents took me to the hospital and I was diagnosed with a disease called lupus. For all of you who don't know what it is, it's a skin disease that causes rashes or sores. In my case, it was all over my cheeks, the same as what my grandma had. Worst of all, there was no cure. The doctors could only improve the way my skin looked, prevent scarring, and help me feel better overall. This couldn't be happening. Why me? When we got home, I ran right upstairs to my room and stared into the mirror. I'd gone from pretty to ugly in the space of a day. It wasn't fair. And then suddenly my phone rang. It was Julian. Oh no, in all the drama, I'd forgotten about our planned video call. I couldn't let him see me like this. I was so exhausted with all this lupus stuff that I couldn't think of a solution. So I just turned my phone off. I texted him the next day that I was busy so I couldn't FaceTime with him. This carried on for weeks. I just couldn't bring myself to tell him the truth. Then he texted me saying that he got the message loud and clear, that I didn't want to be his friend anymore. I texted him back telling him this wasn't the case and I'd just been super busy. But the damage was done. He stopped calling me after that and even unfriended me on Facebook. And that was it. I lost my best friend and also my first love, all because I couldn't cope with my new appearance. Little by little, I was shutting myself off and pushing everyone around me away. I just didn't want anyone to see me like this. Instead, I wanted to hide away from the world. Each day, I'd watch my classmates hang out together and I'd walk off by myself and go to my favorite tree, lean against the trunk, close my eyes, listen to some sad songs, and remember all the good times I had with Julian. This was basically part of my daily routine during the whole 4 years of high school. School finished and I moved away to college. Things got better. I made a few friends who accepted me for the way I looked and slowly, I started to accept it too. There was this one tree on campus. It looked just like the one back at home, so I went there all the time. One day, I was sitting there reading a book when this guy in a baseball cap started measuring the ground. Then, without looking at me, he said, "Excuse me, can you please move?" I was confused, so I asked, sure, but why?" The guy replied,
"Oh, the college is going to build a new cafeteria here, so we have to chop down this tree."
"What?" They wanted to chop down my favorite spot on campus just so that they could build some stupid cafeteria? No way! Who was this guy anyway? And didn't anyone ever tell him it was rude not to look people in the eyes when talking to them? I gave him a piece of my mind. You architects are all the same. You never give a damn about what you have to destroy to build an ugly building. Leave this tree alone or I'll chop you down. Then I gave him a really dirty look. He just shrugged and carried on measuring. This made me so mad that I kicked him in the butt, causing him to fall onto the ground. His cap fell off and whoa, it couldn't be. Julian? Was that really him? But how? Wasn't he in Germany? Why was he here? And why didn't he recognize me? I mean, I had a different haircut and all, but I didn't think I've changed that much. Or was it because of my lupus? Suddenly, I heard him say,
What the? Are you mad? What's wrong with you?
Oh gosh, I'd totally forgotten that he was still lying on the ground. I mumbled out sorry, and immediately rushed back to my dorm. That night, I couldn't sleep. Instead, all I could think about was Julian. He was so handsome and so tall. How could he have become so good looking? Why did this stupid disease pick me? There was my first love right in front of me after all those years apart. But because of my disease, he didn't know who I was. He blossomed and I hadn't. Maybe it was for the better that Julian didn't recognize me. If he knew this was how I look like now, oh boy, I didn't even want to imagine how embarrassed I would be. So, okay, let's just put it aside for now. What I first needed to do was save my tree. There's no way I was letting the college chop it down. I did some research and found out that the construction would begin in a week. So I had time to convince as many students as I could to protest against it. And when the day came, I had about 20 people with me. We all held signs and said, "Save the tree" and "Stop the chop." The head of campus, Julian, and the construction workers were trying to make us leave, but we were persistent. At the end, they had to push back the construction dates. One of us remained by the tree at all times, come rain or shine. It was exhausting and cold, but it was worth it when the tree was saved. Then, one day when I was on tree guarding duty, my friend rushed over to me and excitedly told me that the college was going to change the location of the new building. That was such great news. Apparently, Julian had told them that the ground was more suitable in another location. Why would he help us all of a sudden? Did he have a change of mind? I went to class with those questions that kept bugging my mind, and right after school was out, I came over to the tree again, and to my surprise, I saw Julian standing next to it. I walked towards him and asked, "Why did you convince them to change the location of the building? I mean, we really appreciate it, but why the change of heart?" Julian froze for a second and then said, "Hey, it's Vanessa, back with the final part of my story. So, my first love Julian moved to Germany, and due to my insecurities, we lost touch. Then, years later, I saw him at my college campus, measuring my favorite tree to be chopped down. He didn't recognize me, but thanks to him, the tree was saved. He said to me,
"This tree must mean a lot to you, or else you wouldn't have fought so hard to save it. I had a tree like this once," he sighed. "Please continue to protect it."
I felt a pain in my heart. I knew he meant our tree back home. This was all so overwhelming. There I was looking at my first love, but he was oblivious to who I was. And I couldn't tell him because I was terrified that doing so would mean I'd lose him all over again. After that, I didn't see him around campus anymore. Was he living here now? Was he in another city? There were so many questions I wanted to ask him. Then my mom called and told me to come home for the weekend. I arrived there to find her setting out food in the kitchen. On seeing me, she said, "Oh, honey, I have a surprise for you. Julian and his family are back in town, and they're coming over for lunch." What? Oh, no. Why hadn't she told me sooner? I started to panic. What was I going to do now? I rushed to my room and tried to find anything I could use to cover my face. Finally, I found one thing. I heard my mom opening the door for Julian and his family. Then my mom cheerfully shouted, "Vanessa, where are you, sweetie? Come down. Julian is here, and oh my, he's so handsome." But my parents' smile soon disappeared as soon as they saw me coming down the stairs. They literally stood there with their mouths wide open. My mother stuttered, "Vanessa, what in God's name are you wearing?" Yeah, so the only thing I could find to cover my face was a face mask. Worse still, it had a smiling dog face on it. I know I look ridiculous, but at least my lupus was covered. Thinking fast, I muttered, I have a cold and I don't want anyone to catch it." Then I turned and saw Julian and my heart fluttered. He gave me a confused look. He clearly didn't know how to take my accessory. This was so awkward. The last memory he had of me was that I didn't want to video call with him anymore. And that was 5 years ago. Ugh, this sucked. I nodded at him and he nodded back. I caught him looking at me, no doubt because I was wearing that dumb mask. But we didn't actually speak to each other. Luckily, our parents were carrying the conversation. But then, my mom suggested that we should all go out for dinner tomorrow night. Mom, not again! Why didn't she realize that I needed to be pre-warned about these things? Then again, it was so easy for her as she had perfect looking skin. Luckily, Julian's family were busy tomorrow. Phew! But they suggested having dinner the day after that. Ugh! Dinner was unavoidable, so I had to figure out a way of disguising my face. So, the evening of the dinner, I ran downstairs and my mom glared at me. Vanessa, what on earth are you wearing? You look like Elton John. So yeah, I was wearing these huge fashion sunglasses. They were the only ones I could find online that I knew would arrive in time. I replied, "This is the new trend now. You're just too old to understand." At the restaurant, Julian and his family gave me the weirdest looks, but I acted like everything was normal and mentioned how good the food was. To be honest, I felt so awkward and just hoped this meal would be over soon. It all got a bit too much, so I went outside to get some fresh air. That's when Julian appeared. At first, he just stood there next to me in silence. It got to a point where I couldn't take it anymore, so I said, "Since when did you come back here?" He replied, "Since 1 month." Feeling annoyed, I replied, "Why didn't you call me?"
Ness, you're the one who didn't want to be friends anymore.
Oh no, you got it all wrong. I had some problems, girl problems. I couldn't tell you.
You know, I was really lonely in Germany. You were the only friend I had.
His voice sagged. I replied, "I know, it was stupid of me. I'm sorry, but you're back now. Can we be friends again?" He looked at me for a bit, then smiled and said,
Seriously, how can I be mad at you now? I mean, look at you.
And then we hugged. I finally had my best friend back, but this wasn't enough for me. Seeing him again made me realize I still loved him even after all these years. My face was the problem. I was convinced that on seeing the real me, he'd run for the hills. After that, Julian and I texted each other loads, but then he asked me out on a date. At first, I was super excited, but then the reality of this dawned on me. I put on my prettiest dress, but as I stood in front of the mirror, all I saw were my bright red cheeks. Maybe I should just risk it. Maybe he would understand and still love me? I mean, it was inner beauty that counted, right? But no, I couldn't do it. So I messaged him back saying that I couldn't go out with him, but he was persistent. In the end, I ran out of excuses, so eventually I had to agree. Okay, so now what? I couldn't keep on wearing face masks and sunglasses. Then I had an idea. What about makeup? I knew it would make my skin worse, but this was an emergency. I put some makeup on, but the rashes were still visible, so I put more and more and more and I resembled Billy the Puppet from the Saw movies. Then there was a knock at the door. Oh no, he was here already! Oh well, I hope he likes horror movies. On seeing me, Julian looked kinda shocked, but he tried to act normal. The restaurant we went to was so nice, but every time he looked at me, he had to try his hardest not to laugh, which in turn made me want to laugh too. Awkward. Afterward, we went for a walk through the park when it suddenly began to rain. So we hurried over to our favorite big tree to take cover. Julian found the carving on the tree and said,
Do you remember this? That day I promised you I'd come back for you.
Then he turned to me, pulled me towards him. His face came closer and oh my god, was he going to kiss me? But then he stopped and said,
Oh Ness, your makeup is floating away. I have a tissue. Let me clean your face.
Wait, what? Oh no, not now. I panicked. I didn't know what to do, so I hid my face from Julian and said, Don't look at me. Can you please go? Confused, he asked,
What? You're acting really weird. What's wrong?
Then he turned to look at my face. I pushed him away and said, No, I'm fine. I'm just having a girl problem moment. But Julian kept insisting, so I freaked out and ran into the rain. He ran behind me yelling,
Vanessa, stop!
I kept running, but then I tripped and my face fell into a muddy puddle. Oh, great! My whole face was covered with mud and my knee was bleeding, so I couldn't stand up. Julian had to help me hobble to the nearest drugstore to buy some bandages and some betadine to clean the wound for me. I sat on a bench feeling like a wounded puppy when he took out a tissue and started wiping the mud from my face. At first, I stopped him, but then he gave me a really serious look, so I let him clean my face. Well, that was it. Julian would finally see my face and he would definitely not want to date me anymore. While cleaning my face, he looked surprised. Then he said,
"Wait a minute, you're going to college in Florida, right? Didn't I meet you like a few weeks ago on the campus? Why didn't you tell me it was you?"
"Because I didn't want you to see me like this." I turned my head away. He looked confused, so he asked,
"Like what exactly? Ness, you're acting so weird."
What did he mean? Was he trying to make fun of me? So I shouted in anger, "It's my face! Don't act like you don't see it. I was afraid that if you saw my face, you wouldn't want to be with me anymore." Julian shook his head and said,
"No, Ness, why would I ever do that? To me, you will always be beautiful. Beauty isn't only about having a pretty face. It's about having a pretty mind, a pretty heart, and a pretty soul."
And then he kissed me on the forehead. Oh gosh, I never imagined that it would turn out like this. Julian was indeed the sweetest person ever, and I should have never have doubted him. Well, Julian and I became an official couple. Loving him makes me so happy. He makes me believe in myself and reminds me that regardless of my lupus, I'm still beautiful. And we will soon get married in a few months. I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with him, happily ever after. So, as you can see, in the end, Julian was my first and my last love, which means my fairy tale dreams did come true. But let me tell you this, it's not important if you marry your first love or not. It's important that you marry someone who makes you happy and someone who accepts you for who you are. So, when you find someone like that, then hold on to them, whether this is your first or your 21st love.
I'm sure that you've all heard the phrase, "you reap what you sow." Well, I didn't really grasp what that meant until it happened to me. I'm Samuel, by the way, but you can call me Sam. I'm 21 and currently a college student. A few months ago, I did something awful to my girlfriend, and I'm still paying the price. If only I could go back in time. It all started back in high school. Stella and I grew up together in a small town just outside of Nashville, and we were totally in love. When it came time to go to college, we both chose to study in Nashville, but at different colleges. Stella was the sweetest girl I'd ever known, and our big plan was to get married after college and start a family. She chose to study education so she could become a teacher. Her studies were so full on, she was busy all the time, whereas I'd chosen business school, and even though it was busy, I wasn't as crazy as studying education. I actually had quite a lot of spare time, so I ended up joining an entrepreneur club. Seeing as I wanted to start my own business one day, Stella totally encouraged me, and even though it meant we didn't see each other much, things were still okay between us. But pretty soon, things started to change. The more new people I met, the more I realized I was growing apart from Stella, and that, in actual fact, she kind of bored me. All she talked about were her classes, and even though she still loved me so much, she was the same old girl for years. Things just felt dull between us. So when a new girl called Jenny joined the entrepreneur club, I couldn't help but notice her. She was 3 years younger than me and so gorgeous. She liked wearing tight clothes, which could show all her body's curves. All the guys couldn't take her eyes off her, me included. One time, seeing Jenny stand in the corner of our club room scrolling her phone, I decided to approach her and see if she was as sweet as her look. I walked up to her and said, "Hey, are you a camera?" She looked confused and said, "Huh?" So I said, "Because when I look at you, I can't help but smile." She didn't even laugh. She just flipped her hair and walked off saying, "Nice try, but no thanks." Even though she hadn't been impressed by my attempt at a pickup line, I couldn't give up. If there was one thing in life I loved, it was a challenge. So from that moment on, I challenged myself to win her over. I know this was wrong because I had Stella, but guys, I was bored. However, a couple days later, there was a rumor going around that Jenny and our club's president, Max, were dating. Well, turns out this was indeed true, and to say I was disappointed would be an understatement. But I already had a girlfriend, so I tried to shake it off. A few weeks later, I was walking on the street when I heard an argument. I realized it was Max and Jenny, and I couldn't help but eavesdrop. The last thing I heard Jenny say before she stormed off was, "Just wait and see." Then suddenly she bumped into me and fell onto the ground. I quickly helped her up and apologized, but Jenny said, "Sorry, Sam, I'm so upset." I felt so bad for her, so I offered to take her home and make sure she was okay. I called us a cab and we climbed in. Little did I know Max was watching us from across the street. In the cab, we were silent. Then eventually I plucked up the courage to ask, "So, you and Max, what happened?" And Jenny said that they'd broken up because he didn't like her wearing tight clothing. She said she could wear whatever she wanted and asked if I agreed. So I said, "Yeah, of course. It's your body. If I were Max, I'd be so proud to have such a beautiful girlfriend." After I said that, Jenny leaned her head on my shoulder. I couldn't believe it. Soon, she'd be all mine. But hang on, what about Stella? I decided to not say anything to her at that moment because she was busy with exams. As soon as I got Jenny, I'd break up with Stella. After that, Jenny started opening up to me more. We often text until after midnight. And in the club, she started to bring me snacks and even stayed behind to help me clean up after. She was even flirting with me, and everyone in the club had noticed, including Max. He didn't approach me about it, but I often caught him staring at me in a nasty way. As for Stella, she still called me often, but I was kind of quiet. She came to my place one day and insisted on making me dinner. She said it'd been a while since our last time together. So I reluctantly spent time with her, but to be honest, I didn't care. During the meal, I just fastened my eyes on the phone to text Jenny. I knew that Stella noticed a change in me as I looked up. I caught her sadly suspicious gaze. I was kind of nervous. Was she going to question me? What should I say? At that moment, I couldn't find any excuse for my inattention. But I wasn't ready to tell her the truth yet. My relationship with Jenny wasn't official, so I didn't want to break up with Stella. But still, she didn't say anything, so I also kept quiet. Phew! One weekend, I went to a board game cafe with the club members. Jenny also came, and when it was time to head home, she asked if I could drop her home. Obviously, I agreed, and Jenny gave me a big hug. When I looked to the left, I saw Max watching us, but neither me nor Jenny cared one bit. Move over, Max. Jenny's mine now, I thought to myself. In the car on the way home, we chatted a lot, and she said she'd heard I already had a girlfriend. I found myself opening up about Stella, and even told Jenny how boring she was. Jenny didn't say much, but when we got to her house, she asked if I wanted to come in for a bit and have a beer. I mean, I didn't have to think twice about my answer, and I don't think I need to spell out to you about what happened next. Well, after that night, Jenny still came to the club, and we continued on as friends, acting as if nothing had happened between us. But a month later, she suddenly texted me, and my life flipped upside down. "Sam, I'm pregnant," she said. And she'd even send me a photo of the positive pregnancy test. I was so shocked. How could this have happened? I immediately went over to her place and even bought another pregnancy test for her, just to make sure. Well, there was no doubt it was positive. So I told her I'd stand by her and share the responsibility. After that, I decided to break up with Stella. I talked to her on the phone and said we were too different. She was such an introvert while I was an active and open person. Of course, it broke her heart. She tried to hold me, but I was going to become a father, and Jenny needed me. Plus, I wasn't interested in Stella anymore. Over the next little while, I spent a lot of time with Jenny, and we officially started dating. I went into full-on protective mode. I picked her up every time we went out, like going to school, to our club. In public, I always took care of her, from the smallest things, such as getting her food and water, opening the car door, and so on. And of course, Jenny was very happy. Every time I did a thing for her, she always showed people how sweet and caring I was. Hearing that, the happier I was, and the more I cared for her. When there were only two of us, I brought her food and pregnancy pills to make sure she was okay. I started reading books about raising a kid. She liked to take pictures of all that stuff and post it online. Maybe she was really proud of a boyfriend like me. Eventually, I started to realize that this kid deserves a perfect family, so I decided to propose to Jenny. Sure, we might not get married for a while, but an engagement would at least make things more real. I bought the ring and arranged everything. I chose her favorite restaurant, and just before dessert, I got down on one knee and said, "I know we're moving fast, and you might not be ready, but I love you, and I want our baby to have the best life. I'll always take care of you both, and can't wait to spend my life with you. Will you marry me?" I waited, and Jenny looked shocked. Then suddenly she asked me to stand up and looked so embarrassed. Then she said, well, this is awkward. I couldn't believe it. I asked her why, and she said, "Well, I'm not actually pregnant, so I'm sorry you kinda broke up with your girlfriend for no reason." I didn't understand. I said in shock, "But the test was positive." And Jenny said, "Oh man, I was gonna tell you sooner or later. Actually, the test wasn't even mine. I borrowed it from a pregnant woman. I just wanted to get my own back on Max and prove to him that other guys also want me and that I can live without him. Oh my God, was she for real? I couldn't believe it. So I said to her, "So, you used me?" Then she almost laughed and said, "Well, duh. I mean, get real. We barely know each other. Why would we get married?" "Yeah, well done. You got me," I bitterly said. "Thanks," Jenny replied with a blank face. Then she just got up and left. I felt sick. Turned out Jenny was just a liar. She'd done all this just to get back to her ex. She played me like a fool, and I'd fallen for it. Poor Stella. How could I have treated her like that? And that's when I realized I deserved it. I'd treated Stella so badly, and now Jenny had done the same thing to me. Stella had always been there for me. She was the sweetest girl ever, and my stupid wandering eyes had led me to Jenny. Well, it served me right. But I had to apologize to Stella, even if she didn't forgive me. I couldn't live with myself knowing how much I'd messed up. So it's true what they say. You reap what you sow. I certainly learned that the hard way. And I can't blame anyone but myself. Lesson well and truly learned.
Hi, everyone. Have you ever had someone get revenge on you? It's not fun, right? Well, this is my story about revenge, but with a twist. You won't believe who my prankster turned out to be. Oh, let me introduce myself. I'm Audrey, and I'm 24. To say I've had an unhappy life would be an understatement. Firstly, my dad ditched my mom for another woman. And not long after that, my mom passed away from a serious illness. Basically, my entire life fell apart in a matter of months, and I was still too young at that time. It was tough growing up, and I always think that my life could never turn the page again. But on one fine day, someone popped into my life and changed everything. His name was Jim, and he was 7 years older than me, and he seriously turned my life around. He lived in another city, but he often came to my city on business trips. We fell for each other quickly. That happiness didn't last long, though. One day I was working in the clothes store when a girl around the same age as me came in. She wanted my help to choose some dress, but she was pretty rude to me, and I kept catching her staring at me with evil eyes. Who was she? And why was she treating me like that? Finally, after about 2 hours, she made up her mind and picked up only a tie that she wanted to buy for her husband instead. I was relieved to get rid of her, but shocked when I saw the name on her credit card. Jim Stewart. Her husband had the exact same name as my boyfriend. What a coincidence. She must have caught me staring at the card because she suddenly said, "Yes, Jim is my husband. Now stay away from him." What? Her husband? My Jim. Before I even had a chance to react, she turned to everyone in the store and said, "This girl is a gold digger, and she's trying to break up my marriage." I was shocked. I tried to explain that it wasn't true, but she wouldn't listen to me. She just stormed out, and I was left standing there hearing people whispering about me. It was the most humiliating moment of my life. I immediately ran to the staff room and called Jim. I was really hoping it had all been a big misunderstanding, but I could tell from Jim's tone that it was the truth. He told me he'd lied to me, and that he actually lived in the same city. He just made up the business trip stuff so he wouldn't have to see me often. Then he said, "Audrey, I honestly love you. I'm serious about us." Hang on, was he for real? It was ridiculous. I was disgusted by him. How could he treat me like that? I hung up and felt horrified. It brought back horrible memories of the woman who stole my dad away from my mom. I didn't want to be that woman. The next day, I moved out of the house Jim had rented for me. I didn't want to be associated with that loser anymore. But life works in mysterious ways. The day I moved into my new house, I saw Jim's wife. And you won't believe it. It seemed that she just moved in next door too. Was this some kind of joke? As soon as she saw me, she smirked and said, "Wow, what a coincidence. Hello, neighbor. I'm Linda." Seeing her unpacking her stuff all by herself, I couldn't help but wonder where Jim was. But then I thought maybe Linda had ended things with him and had moved here alone. I hope so anyways. I'd hate to have Jim as a neighbor. So that's when my new life began. And it has been crazy ever since. From that first week of living there, Linda started pranking me. It all began with her throwing trash into my yard. I even caught her doing it, and she just grinned and said, "Oops, my hand slipped." Then she walked away laughing. It made me furious. And that was just the beginning. One weekend, a delivery guy rocked up on my porch with 10 extra large pizzas. I tried to explain I hadn't ordered them, And that's when Linda appeared at my door and said, "Oh, thanks for ordering me dinner, Audrey. I'm starving." Then she grabbed 5 of the pizzas and ran to her house, leaving me there with a bill of $100. Jeez, it was so annoying, and I had no option but to pay. Linda was too much. Seriously. As much as her pranks drove me up the wall, I also felt sorry for her. I knew what it was like to have someone you love stolen away from you. She must have hated me so much for ruining her marriage, even though it hadn't been my fault. I decided to just put up with her pranks. She'd get over it eventually, and it's not like they were harming me, right? Well, one night I heard the doorbell. I wasn't expecting anyone and was surprised to see a young guy standing there with a poster that said, "I agree to be your boyfriend. Come out with me." I was totally puzzled and told him he had the wrong house, but then he showed me the address on the other side. It was my address. What on earth? I told him I wasn't interested, but he tried to grab my hand and said, "Come on, girl, don't be shy." I told him if he didn't leave me alone, I'd call the police. So luckily he ran away. Needless to ask, I knew for sure that was Linda's joke. But this time she had taken it too far. I decided to go over and have a word with her once and for all. As I was walking to her house, I saw someone familiar on the other side of the road. I couldn't believe it. It was my dad? So many years had passed, and he'd completely changed. But there was no doubt it was him. I suddenly blurted out, "Dad?" But I didn't know what to do next. I was just thinking about my next move when I felt someone behind me. I turned around and saw Linda. She just smirked at me and walked away. What was her problem? Did she hear what I just said? I was so shocked at seeing my dad, I ran back into my house. I hated him for what he'd done to my mom. But he was still my dad, and I wanted to know if he was okay and what he was doing here. I barely slept that night as I couldn't stop thinking about my dad. The next morning, I was sitting by the window when he appeared again. This time, he was with Linda, and she was holding his arm. What was she doing with my dad? Why were they so close? Later that day, I saw him again, and this time, he and Linda were hugging. OMG, were they dating? Maybe Linda had heard me call him dad, and now she was flirting with him to truly get revenge on me. This was too much. The thought of Linda as a stepmom made me want to puke. I waited and waited, but he was inside her house and there was no sign of him leaving. Eventually he left, and as soon as he was in his car, I ran over to her house. I was shaking as I knocked on the door, and as Linda opened it, I said, "You are way too much. Can you just stop with the revenge already?" Linda looked confused and said, "What the heck are you talking about?" Linda still didn't seem to get it, and I was about to explain when I heard footsteps. I turned around and my dad was right there. He said, "What's the matter, Linda? Why are you fighting with this stranger?" Huh? Stranger? Didn't he recognize me? Then Linda butted in and said, "It's okay, Dad. We're just having a misunderstanding here." What? Dad? Is he your dad? Really? I stammered. "Yeah, why? What's the matter?" He said, "Linda, you don't need to lie to me. I know you're dating my dad to get revenge on me," I continued. "Whoa, hold on. What do you mean your dad?" Linda gasped. At that, my dad looked confused too and walked to me and asked if he could look at my hand. After seeing my birthmark, he started crying and hugging me. "Audrey, it's you. It's really you." I didn't know how to react, so I just let him hug me. It had been so long since anyone had held me like this. Ever since my mom had died, I'd tried to be strong and keep it together, but suddenly I couldn't hold back anymore. I burst into tears in his arms. We stood like that for a long time, and eventually he took me into Linda's house and told me the story. It turned out, after he left me and my mom, he got tricked by that woman, and he was so ashamed, he decided to move to another city and start over. He was working hard on a construction site one day when he got injured, so he ended up in hospital, and that's when he met Linda. She'd been in a car accident and needed a blood transfusion urgently. She has a pretty rare blood type, but luckily my dad had the same type and he volunteered to give her a transfusion. After that, they became quite close, and seeing as Linda had lost both her parents in the car accident, my dad eventually adopted her. I couldn't believe it. My dad had been through so much, and this whole time, I thought he was off living his life with a rich woman. I felt so bad for him and decided to leave the past behind and forgive him. As for Linda, she was also left confused by this coincidence. So she left the room to process everything, while I and Dad took time to catch up on our lives. Later, Linda prepared dinner for us 3, and before we digged in, she shyly grabbed my hand and said, "Audrey, I've been so awful to you. I'm sorry. I know you aren't the one responsible for my divorce, but I still felt upset, and that's why I played all those pranks. That was so childish, right? Please forgive me, sister." We laughed it off, then hugged each other to make peace. I couldn't believe it. After all these years of being lonely, suddenly I had a sister, and my dad was back. My life had finally turned a corner, and I almost laughed at the thought that it was all because of meeting Jim. At least one good thing had come out of that disastrous relationship.
Hey, I'm Alice, a teenage girl who always dreamed of finding true love. Several months ago, after a lot of failed hope, time, and effort, I started online dating and found my first ever boyfriend. We had a sweet, romantic online love story until we decided to meet in real life. So I'll take you back to the beginning. I would not be impatient that much when it came to love if both my besties, Kimmy and Zara, didn't get boyfriends, which made me become the only loner of the group. I had to watch them being all lovey-dovey and calling each other weird names like Baby Boo and Cuddly Bear. Yuck! Even if the boys weren't around, they would still drive me crazy talking about their sweet guys all the time. Worse still, when I told them to stop being so obsessed, they immediately insisted on pestering me to find a boyfriend. Ridiculous! I didn't need a boyfriend. I was doing just fine without one. Yeah, right. Who was I trying to kid? Deep down inside, I really wanted somebody by my side who I could be all cringy and lovey-dovey with. My two besties could probably read my mind and took action, and they set up some dates for me. The first was with this boy from school. He looked pretty cute on our first date, and he took me to this nice restaurant. A good start, isn't it? However, he talked about his mother for literally the entire time. Everything in sight reminded him of her. Her favorite foods, how perfectly she made her spaghetti sauce, how politely she would react on the table. In the end, I suggested he go and date his mother instead, as he was clearly obsessed with her. Yeah, that didn't go down well. The next date was with this college boy. I fantasized a million times about a romantic, cozy, and sweet date with him because, it was the middle of winter. But no. He turned up late, and when I asked him where we were going, he shrugged and said, "Wherever." By this point, I was freezing and hungry, so I suggested we go get something to eat. But he told me he had no money and would just watch me eat. I offered to buy him a drink so we could at least sit inside somewhere, but he refused. So we ended up sitting in silence on a bench in the park. I ended up slurping on my hot chocolate just for entertainment. When I got home, I felt super sorry for myself. I was so tired of meetings and wasting time on those idiots. There must be an easier, more possible, and warmer way to find one. So I downloaded a dating app. I'm not a complete idiot. I know that internet dating is risky, so I didn't post any pics of my face, just a landscape picture with a movie quote written on it, and I used a different name, Daisy. The matches started coming in, but it wasn't hard to weed out the fakes. There was even a man using a fake account to try and find out if his daughter was using it. Delete, delete, delete. I was about to give up and accept that I'd be single and alone forever. This online world was exactly like what I'd read about it. All lies. I'd just have to get some cats or something for company. But then, this guy messaged me saying he liked the movie quotes I used. Impressive. So I messaged him back. I found out that this Roger guy had the same movie taste as me, and he even lived in the same neighborhood. We got on so well, so we chatted way past midnight. It seemed like we had everything in common, from favorite pizza toppings to top celebrities. He even shared his love of electronic dance music. And once I tried hearing his recommended playlist, I was immediately completely hooked on it. Wow, this guy seemed interesting. So I decided to flirt it up and see if he had a sense of humor. I mean, I had to create opportunities for myself, right? So I wrote, "Hey Roger, I enjoy chatting with you. Do you know what I would do if I could change the alphabet?" He replied, "No, what would you do?" "I would put you and I together so I could talk to you more." Then he sent me lots of heart icons and said, "You're so funny. Actually, you don't need to change the alphabet, because I also desire to know if there's any other way for me to talk to you. Chatting to this boy had cheered me up, so I sent him my Facebook link. I stayed cautious, so I sent him my clone account, which I sometimes used for sharing cool posts and commenting on pages. Moments later, I got a friend request from Roger. I checked his wall and found out a little more info about him, such as he went to the same high school as me 2 years ago, and he played soccer because there were some field photos. There were no pictures of his face, but that was fine. Those real-life photos could tell me more about him. The thought of having a cute, sporty boyfriend really made me excited. I smiled as I walked out of my room to go to the bathroom. Then I bumped into my older brother, Sam.
Get out of my way, potato head.
He taunted me as usual, but he had this weird grin on his face. Why are you so happy? I asked him.
Never mind,
he replied, while whistling and walking off. Had this weirdo just stuck some stupid note on my back? But, well, I was in a great mood, and wouldn't let this childish bro bother me. I couldn't wait until morning to tell Kimmy and Zara about Roger. They were so excited and said the way I'd found him was like something out of a movie. They kept imagining how our new love story would be, and I had to admit that I began to daydream too. Roger and I messaged each other every night. He was always a great listener, and I could confide in him without feeling shy or anything. It wasn't long before he was always on my mind. I also sent random pictures to him throughout the day of my alien doodles, my shoes, my lunch, and so on. I even got a detention in math class for daydreaming about him. Oh wait, was I in love? I wondered if he felt the same about me. And the fateful day arrived. He sent me a message that both excited and terrified me. He wanted to hear my voice. Okay, so this meant he wanted to voice call or video call. What if he thought I sounded too squeaky? Or what if he thought I was ugly? So I decided to only open the camera when I turned off my room lights. Ironically, Roger did the same. He said he had to pretend like he was sleeping so that his sister wouldn't come in and interrupt our convo. Aw, he must be a sweet big brother whom his little girl could always count on. So, yeah, now we'd upgraded from texting to video calls. My feelings for him increased a bit more every day. He always sensed my mood and cheered me up, regardless of how lame my problems seemed. One time, I was annoyed because my parents told me off for forgetting to do my chores. It was not that big a deal. I cried to him on the phone, and he told me it was okay, and that his sister always forgot to do her chores too. So sometimes he had to help her. God, he was so nice. Roger's sister was so lucky to have a big brother like him. Unlike my brother, who always sat back and sniggered whenever I got in trouble. Comparing them made me feel self-pity and cry even harder, until a point that he frantically blurted out, "Listen, Daisy, I like you. Don't cry, because it hurts me so bad that I can't be there for you. I just want to meet you as soon as possible." Oh my God, was he serious? Did this mean he was asking me to be his girlfriend? At first, I was thrilled, but right after that, I started to worry. What if he didn't like the way I looked? Besides, when he'd found out I'd used a clone account to talk to him, would he be angry with me? I needed advice, so I turned to my besties. They told me to go and meet him, as this way I'd know if he was serious about me or not. If he liked the real me, he would hear me out, without getting mad. I arranged to meet Roger in the park, and we both agreed to both wear something red for easy recognition. So I went for a red dress and red headband combo. Cute! I checked my phone a zillion times to make sure he hadn't canceled. I also prepared as best I could by practicing my smile in the mirror and by doing a last-minute nail polish change-up. Yeah, I know, I was a slave to love. Ugh, I hated lovey-dovey couples, but look at me now. We arranged to meet by the flower garden in the park, the perfect location for a daisy. On the way, I had mixed feelings. I was both excited about seeing my online boyfriend for the first time and also worried. I mean, what if he didn't like me? As I arrived, I saw the back of a guy who was wearing a red hoodie. That must be him. What should I do now? Okay, so I took a deep breath, then walked up behind him and timidly said, Hi, Roger. Is that you? He turned around, and to my shock, I saw that it was Sam, my dearest brother.
Alice, what are you doing here?
He asked. What? I'm here to meet my online boyfriend. What about you? I raised an eyebrow.
Me too. I'm meeting a girl. My girlfriend, Daisy.
He flustered out. Are you? Roger? I spluttered out and ended up biting my tongue in the process. Ouch! There was this awkward silence as we both stood there letting the awful truth soak in. Ugh! I swear it was weird to think back on our messages and talking before. I got goosebumps at the thought of my brother's sweet words earlier. I couldn't take this anymore, so I muttered out something about going home, then walked off. But I wasn't paying attention and walked straight into the flower garden and ended up trampling on the flowers, which received disapproving tuts from an onlooker. Oops! I couldn't really go home. It was way too embarrassing. So I wandered aimlessly around the park. Can you guys imagine it? The boy that had filled my dreams for the last 2 months turned out to be my brother! Now I knew why we had so many things in common. Because we were siblings! It started getting dark, but I was still in the park, sitting on a bench and wondering when my life turned into such a mess. Then Sam messaged me saying,
"Where are you? Come back home."
I replied, "No way! I don't want to see your face ever again." He replied,
"That's not what you said earlier."
Trust him to make a joke out of this, but nothing about this situation was funny. Ugh! I replied, "This is all your fault. I'm never coming home. Ever." Then he messaged back,
"Stop being overdramatic. I told Mom you went to Kimmy's. Come home for dinner now."
I didn't want to go home, but it was freezing out here, and I guess I was feeling hungry. Why could Sam be all warm and well-fed while I was cold and miserable? I arrived home to see Sam sitting at the dinner table. I tried my best to avoid eye contact with him, but I ended up turning into a clumsy oaf and dropped a forkful of pasta on my lap. That was so gonna stain. Sam stood up and brought me a tissue box, which made me feel way more awkward. My parents must have found it odd that Sam and me weren't arguing for once, so Mom said, "You two seem to love each other for once, huh?" She was just joking, but I could feel my face turning red. I glanced at my brother, and he seemed even more embarrassed than me. As awkward as it was, we needed to talk to clear the air. So after dinner, I messaged him to meet me outside, and we went for a walk. Finally, I broke the silence. Listen, I know this is the most awkward thing ever. I thought I loved Roger, but now that I know he's you, well, I don't feel the same anymore. He replied,
"Yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot, and I agree with you on the feelings and stuff. You're my annoying sister. Who knew we had so much in common? But I guess it makes sense, as I taught you all the cool stuff you know."
He grinned. "So, are we cool?" I looked at him.
"Yeah, we're cool, Potato Head."
He grinned as he knocked my head, and then in a taunting voice added,
"Hey, what do you think you were doing going online to find a boyfriend? You could have met a serial killer."
I grimaced. "You online dated too, and instead of a serial killer, I have met a guy who pretends to be a cool big brother, huh?"
"It wasn't all lies. I do help you with your chores, or else you must get kicked out of our house for your laziness."
He laughed. "Sorry, bro, I've never seen that. You should do it more often." I sneered as I play hit his arm. We both looked at each other and then burst out laughing. So, this is my story. Pretty awkward, huh? Thankfully, my brother and I are now back to normal. Obvs, neither of us have mentioned it to each other since. As for true love, well, I hope my time will come, but I'm in no hurry to go looking for it. Online dating is not for me. I have to admit, it is kind of funny thinking back on it. If one day in the future my children ask me about my first love, would I have to answer them, "It was your Uncle Sam?" Yeah. I don't think I'll be telling them that.